Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Can you all see and hear me? I'm using my wonderful little camera to show you my new stickers arrived. Gone a bit early, so England, I want my country back. I've got another one here. You're going to like this. Not a lot. Have a look at that one. Do you like that sticker for the back of the car? England. Patriotism is not a crime. There you go. So I am now. Hopefully you can all see and hear me. I'm going to change my camera back before I cross over onto a couple of other little bits and pieces and show you some other bits. Well, first of all, good evening. Yes, it's me. Graham Moore, otherwise known as Daddy Dragon. I'll fill you in of my weekend. I went and picked my beloved up from her mum's in London. I was going to attend the Restore Britain meeting. I decided against it. I don't consider that it would have been a constructive use of my time or our time in terms of that event, right? But I will talk about that again later on in the show, but in a different scenario. But I do want to talk about a few things. So basically, I picked Janet up. I had her engagement ring with me. A mum who is heavily disabled and bedridden, doesn't get out at all. So some people talk about having an hard life when you ain't left your bed for 5 years and you're banging trouble, but she still soldiers on. So I brought the ring into the house. She'd never met me before. And she's thinking, who is this geezer? But it was even worse when I got on one knee and proposed to Janet in front of her mum. And she said, yes, of course. And then we returned to Devon, and now we're ducking and diving in the background some other bits and pieces, but don't worry about that too much. What I will say is I just wanted to put her mum at ease because she didn't know me from Adam. And the second thing is she hadn't been at the house in 5 years. And I just thought, how could I give her something that she'd probably remember for the rest of her life, even though obviously she's very old, with a smile on her face, because she's the only person apart from Janet. She was the personal witness to it. So she's got plenty to talk about to her grandchildren and everyone else's sisters, etc. But it also, I think, put her mind at rest that, I was, I think her daughter's quite safe with me. Unless, of course, you pull out in front of a transit van that's coming at you at 60 mile an hour. So that is that. Let me have a quick look. Here's the Hamlin lectures. Everything's out there. So before we go on, I do want to say a couple of things, and I will get on to the other two subjects, which I think are really important for tonight for obvious reasons. One is the rape gang petition that was heard today, where Rupert Lowe created the petition. 200, and I think it was 84,000 people signed it. I watched that. I'm going to talk about that. And the second thing is the sentencing of Henry Nowak's killer, the murderer, the Sikh with a Kapan. I will be discussing that and how disgusting I believe that sentence was. And how they're trying to spin this in the way that they're spinning it. And these judges need to be impeached. The only way you're ever going to do that is if you elect enough people, because our system is a representative democracy if you abstain from voting, it means you agree with these judges and you agree with the way they are misrepresenting not only the facts but also disrespecting not just Henry Nowak's family but the whole of the country. So I'm going to be talking about that. But before I do, I want to briefly talk about something else. If anyone doesn't know, I'll just give you the quick indication. Henry Nowak's killer was sentenced to life imprisonment with what's known as a tariff of 21 years. I know criminals, career criminals, that have been sentenced to recs of 30 years for killing other criminals, right? So that is a relatively light sentence. And remember, the true and English sentence for murder, especially the type of murder that was obviously witnessed by the jury in this case, where a young life has been taken, the sentence for that is hanging. A very quick time for appeal, but hanging. So again, it's disgusting considering he's 23. He'd be out well before he. And by the way, you all have the ability to object to that sentence, even though you're nothing to do with the trial, but you're members of the public. You can actually write to the CPS and say that should be a sentence of life, meaning life, because of the aggravated circumstances that it was a racially motivated killing of a white person, and it needs to be dealt with in that way. Just to make sure everyone's aware of that. You can all write in and do that. So I'm just going to make sure everyone gets it. And it was terrible. Well, not only was it terrible, I will talk about this more, but a Sikh stood up with a turban in court today and shouted at the judge and called him a racist. And then the family of Nowak started to remonstrate with the family of the killer, and that to bring police into the court. All of them scenes are scenes that we should not be seeing in England, and it is my absolute belief that millions must go, right? But we're going to get on to the next part of the show. There's a story I want to tell you, and the story was from a friend of mine today, and I'm going to bring this up onto your screen. Hopefully you will see it, and there's no address or material in that one, but this is on your screen as we speak, hopefully. And you will see there is a rather frayed on the left-hand corners a Union flag. That was actually hoisted up in a Royal Marine base somewhere in the south of England, and the first Sea Lord turned up at the base, and he went up to a Royal Marine Commando, a friend of mine, who was there, whether he was on guard duty or whatever he was doing, and the first Sea Lord said to him, "What is that on the flagpole?" So the Royal Marine Commando respectfully said, "That's a Union flag, sir." And he said, "Is it? Well, get it down." So he did no more but scuttled off over to the flagpole, pulled the Union flag down, and put it in his kit bag, right? And then the story is, and it's a true story, that what the actual Sea Lord said to him was, hoist the flag which is the Royal. You are in the Royal Navy. You are not in the Army, and you represent, and your Marines represent the Royal Navy and the Crown. And the Royal Navy ensign for England is this. And that was the flag that was hoisted up. What you'll see with that ensign is the Union flag is one tiny corner. It's a very small part of the ensign that is normally run on the back of battleships or on land with certain bases. They will fly that flag to say who they are and what they represent. And then you've obviously got the English flag. There's more to this, but all I'm doing is just showing you. And by the way, that's on the wall of his house, right? So inside, by the way, but he's just put them up there to show me. He got him out of his kit bag to show me what they are. So what is the moral of this story? Well, I'm going to go back and show you what the moral of the story is, because there is a story to this, and people are forgetting they're forgetting who they are, and they're forgetting their history because they've never been told it, and they've never been told the truth. And on the top left of that flag is the Union flag of Westminster, or Parliament. It represents the political union. It does not represent in terms of the wider areas. So it doesn't represent directly Devon, and I'm going to get to the point of some more of this in a couple of minutes because there's an interesting part of this story. It doesn't represent any of them things. Well, because Devon has its own flag. Gloucestershire has its own flag. Dorset has its own flag. Norfolk has its own flag. Lancashire, Yorkshire has its own flag, right? Cumbria has its own flag. All of these places have their own flags because they were independent shires within the greater structure of England, right? England was the Parliament, and there was a constitution, and there were previous charters to that English Parliament that can never be receded if they said for all time to come for our heirs in the future, or words to that effect, any phrase of that nature. So I was talking earlier, and there is specific, and I'm hoping I can bring it up on my screen, if I can find it, that is. That may be the best thing to bring up, right? So I'm going to bring this up and show you. Well, let me see if I can share this tab instead. So you've got the white ensign, a brief history of the iconic Royal Navy flag, right? The Royal Navy is one of the oldest and most established navies in the world. It is united by 475 years of history, a motto that states, if you wish for peace, prepare for war. And it's a flag, the white ensign, which is flown on, it says that it's British Royal Navy ships and shore establishments around the world, right? It might just be a simple piece of cloth, but a flag can be a powerful symbol that conveys nationhood and belonging. The Union Jack, do you know the correct way up in pictures, blah, blah, blah. And flags embody the value of an organisation, right? So again, there's many elements of this that I'm going to show you. But there is the ensign on a submarine, for example. But there's many other parts of this that people don't understand. Red, white and blue, for example, just to make sure everyone understands this, didn't come from the Union flag or the Union Jack. It came from 3 squadrons of the Royal Navy. That's where the red, white and blue actually comes from. If you look at the Scottish ensign, it has a Scottish square in the corner and then it will have a red ensign. And they separate the colours of the ensigns to denote whether it's a merchant ship, a warship, or an official ship like Customs and Excise, for example, or Border Force. It can have a different colour background, but it should always, if it's the nation it's representing, and that's why the Royal Navy. Does everyone understand that the army lost its royal title because it turned its back on the king? There was a number of reasons for it, right? But the Royal Navy has always kept the insignia for royal because it didn't turn itself over to any other forces, right? So just to make sure you're all aware of this, there's a lot of history of this, so I'm not going to do hours of it, but I am going to explain or try to explain something that some people have asked me questions on charters. And what is a charter? Douglas Carswell has come out with something that's really interesting, and he said you can make an order in Parliament, which is King in Council. Now that's very similar, but not the same, but very similar to how they created a charter, right? In other words, it's not the wider Parliament because that came later, but the charters that we all understand, and I'm going to talk to you about another part of that in a sec. But the charters were King in Council who had made a decision to give to the people X, Y, Z, and then they formalised it into a charter. Right now, prior to the Magna Carta, it was the Charter of Rights. But some places, and this is what I'm going to try and show you now, hopefully. And there is a greater story to this, which I'm about to tell you. This is a book all about Bristol, right? And the reason why it's important, if we get into what it actually says in this book, this is a book. It's a reprint. It's not the original. Bristol, right? But the city charters containing the original institution of mayors and all officers whatsoever, also the common council and the ancient laws and customs of the city, corrected according to the Latin originals, right? And then if you go through a book like this, it tells you exactly what it is. And by the way, it actually tells you here that Bristol itself is a county, not just a city, right? And what it says is counties of Gloucester and Somerset thereafter separated, and likewise in all things exempted, as well as land by water, and that the county by itself and forever called the county of Bristol, and that the said burgesses, their heirs and successors forever, may have within the said town of Bristol and suburbs thereof the precincts of the same, and metes and bounds, and as they are limited, and the liberties and freedoms underwritten, and that the same fully enjoyed and used. That is to say, that every mayor of the said town to Bristol, for the time being, as soon as he shall be elected mayor, may ischibata to us and our heirs in the town of Bristol, to the suburbs precincts aforesaid, and that the said burgesses, commonalty, and their heirs and successors forever may have one sheriff. That's where America gets electing their sheriffs. Every year you have to elect a new sheriff, right? But then it says to you there, said town, the suburbs precincts of the same, of which sheriff shall be yearly chosen and appointed according to the form underwritten. That is to say, the said burgesses and commonalty, which is the people, every year amongst themselves shall choose 3 persons, the names of whom shall yearly forever return into the chancery. So you had your own chancery, and the chancery of our heirs under the common seal of our said town of Bristol, and of the said 3 persons, we and our heirs or councils of us and heirs in our name shall yearly elect one to be sheriff of the said town of Bristol, suburbs, blah, blah. And it goes into detail and tells you, why is this important? Because, and again, I understand where people like Lotus Eaters and Carl, etc. I mean, as far as I know, he's got offices in Bristol. And he says he's a historian, and I get that. But why doesn't he never talk about Bristol and the charters of Bristol, right? So to make a point a little bit further here, I'm just going to say this to you. There was a recent issue, and let me see if I can pull this back off and then go back to it. Let me go back to my normal screen so you'll see this. So remember what that was about was the actual charters, right? So I'm going to go back. Now, I want you to understand this because it was one of our members that drew this to my attention, right? Smithfield Meat Market and Bill and Gates Fish Wholesale Markets, right? In the early 2020s, the City of London Corporation, during COVID, planned to relocate these two historic wholesale markets from central London to a new consolidated site in Dagenham. Specifically, South Dagenham, Dagenham Dock area, in the London borough of Havering, near Romford. Havering Council successfully objected and petitioned against the move, citing, and don't forget this was the City of London, who have a charter, was saying they was moving these two markets to this area, right? Havering Council, and citing the Royal Charter of 1247. Now, Bristol has one of, if I remember rightly, it was 1650, if I remember rightly, or 1660. 1050 or 1060 or something like that. Right, so these are ancient charters. The Royal Charter of 1247, granted by King Henry III, this charter established Romford Market and protected it. So there was protectionism for the local workers. It protected it by banning rival retail markets within 6 2/3 miles, about a day's sheep drive to Romford, right? The proposed Dagenham site fell well within this protected radius. The Charter's medieval sheep law was invoked in parliamentary proceedings. Remember what I just said? Parliamentary proceedings for the City of London Markets Bill. This created a significant legal and political hurdle for relocation. Romford Market itself dates back to 1247, originally a livestock market, and was further protected by the 1465 Charter for the liberties of Havering. Havering Council used these ancient rights to argue against the new wholesale markets operating nearby. Now, you can use these same arguments, right? The plans faced delays and complications due to this, though the markets were still operating from their original sites as of recent updates. This is a classic case of medieval charters clashing with modern urban development, right? So I'm going to go back to my main screen a second. Do you all understand what I've just said here and read out as a brief what happened? So go back to this, and again, all I'm doing is showing you that these charters do exist. This is the Royal Charters, and there it is there. Charles II, by the grace of God, England, Scotland, France, and Ireland, etc., to all to whom the present letters shall come, greetings, right? And then it tells you what is, again, there's a preamble to the charter. It starts to talk about the whole, and it talks about King Richard. It talks about various elements. It talks about Gloucester. It talks about these different areas, etc. It's really important that people understand that these old law books are just as valid today as when they was written. The charters were written. People dismiss it, but Douglas Carswell was quite rightly told people there are other ways of doing things in English law. Now, what's really important for people to understand is another element to this, and I'm just going to make sure you all understand what I'm talking about. It's called, I think it's called desuetude. So it's DESUETUDE, right? And it's a bit of a funny one to try and pronounce. That's a legal term, right? England and the UK does not recognise, well, actually, England doesn't recognise the doctrine of desuetude, right? Unlike some legal systems, e.g., parts of Scotland, Scottish history, or civil law countries. So, a civil law country is what I've been trying to explain. They are forcing civil law upon us, and how they've pushed that into an English Parliament is with the Acts of Union. So, they've then started to apply desuetude. We don't recognise that in England, and we are protected by ancient customs and laws. Whereas the Scots, now Southern Ireland, because it changed its constitution in 1936, and the European Union operate on a different legal system. Now, what's happening? Unlike some legal systems in parts of Scotland, civil law countries, old statutes do not automatically lapse or become invalid just because they fall into long disuse or become obsolete. Now, before, and I'm going to show you it again in a couple of minutes if I can find it on my shelf, which I doubt. Have I got that old book on there? It's The Reinvention of Magna Carta. It's on there. No, it's A Reinvention of Magna Carta. It's probably on here somewhere. I bet that's it. No, that's not it. Oh, it's one of them books. I haven't got it in front of me. I wish I had, but I haven't. So why? Parliamentary sovereignty. So what they're saying is only Parliament can repeal, amend, override its own laws. But if they're not their own laws, if they was created before by charters, they can't override them. It needs to be put to the people. Courts cannot declare them dead through non-use, right? So I just want to make sure everyone understands this. This is crucially important for people who watch this show to understand what I am saying to you, right? I'm not making this up. This is the law. So if you look at the Metric Martyr case, what Sir John Laws stated, and he set it out in paragraph 64, 63, 64, 65, and I think 66, there is a hierarchy of laws in this country. You cannot impliedly repeal a constitutional right or a common law right. You must expressly repeal it, and that means it must be on the face of the bill, and you take the political consequences for what you have done, right? And if you're going to tell people you can't have juries, which are protected by the English Bill of Rights, that are protected as ancient laws and customs, they need to put that directly to the people. They need to either put it in a manifesto, or they need to hold a referendum. And I would argue that even holding a referendum, they couldn't do it, right? It has to be expressly repealed. Now, I did bring this up on another show when I brought up the table of chemical elements, right? And that is to say that there is a table of these elements. We know what they are. now, as they stand, you can't take them away because they've been discovered. We know what they are. We're now teaching people. But imagine over time that the chemistry teachers are told, don't talk about that element, that element, that element. And in the future generations, all of a sudden lose the vital parts of chemistry that help them create something else, right? That is going to potentially benefit mankind. So you can add to rights, common law rights and constitutional rights, but you cannot take them away, right? It's technically unlawful. So getting back to this whole situation with the laws and what they're saying. So again, I'm going to go into this in a bit more detail. It is really important, and it's especially important because of the events we're now seeing. And it ties into the flags and what they represent. So a law stays technically in force until expressly repealed by a latter act of Parliament, as long as that is within the Constitution. Queen Anne said you can't debate the rights of the rights of Englishmen. Right? It's expressly forbidden for Parliament to do that, or to make laws that counter those liberties. That's what a member of Parliament is there for, to understand exactly what your liberties and freedoms are for. And if anyone tries to take them away, they're there to argue against it. Parliament periodically passes statute law repeal acts, but they cannot. They must do it expressly on a bill. And if it's an act of Parliament or a statute that completely protects you as a subject to the realm of England, they are supposed to tell you. What I'm trying to say is that the Declaration of Rights and the English Bill of Rights expressly state forever the king could not have become the king unless he agreed to the Declaration of Rights, which he did. That is a contract in law. And his family only became king because they swore an oath to a solemn oath, which is to God and to the subjects of the realm, to keep his side of the bargain, not become tyrannous, and to make sure that our laws were enforced. Right? You can all currently see that this king has not abided by that oath, and therefore, by deed, he has abdicated. But no one wants to talk about this. The only person who's getting close to talk about it, if I'm honest, is Rupert Lowe and, I may add, Douglas Carswell, because he started. But there are slight adjustments I would make to the depth of what he's actually talking about. But in short, no automatic erasure by neglect, only deliberate repeal by Parliament, right? So if these people start doing things that they're not allowed to do, you can stand up in any court of law, and Halsby's Laws of England that I've got here state that the constitutional laws in their entirety can be used in any court in the land, whether it be contract law, whether it be public law, which is basically criminal injunction, you're not allowed to do it, or plain criminal cases, right? So if you've got a weapon and it is purely defensive, whatever it is, and you are an Englishman, a Protestant, Catholics were already armed, right? So it's an existing right of the English. You can carry that weapon in self-defense, no matter what it is. It is to your own conditions, meaning how much you can afford. So if it's a dagger, you can carry a dagger. If it's a flick knife, you can carry a flick knife. If it's a shotgun, you can carry a shotgun. If it's a machine gun, you can carry a machine gun, as long as it is for defensive purposes only, all right? And in defense of the realm, your family, or your property. That is the law of the land, right? And it is a constitutional law that is enshrined in the English Bill of Rights. It is where America got its Second Amendment from, and the Kerr case with Justice Scalia, mentioned that it was a pre-existing right. It cannot be infringed. So he said historical inquiry showed that was the case. He could have gone one step further and said it was actually a pre-existing right before the English Bill of Rights. They was actually affirming that in the English Bill of Rights. Now, the English Bill of Rights says forever 3 times, and in this kingdom for all time to come, or this realm for all time to come. So 4 times it makes reference to forever. So if you have got a weapon and you are English and it is purely defensive, in other words, you're not robbing a bank, that's highly unlawful. And in fact, if you'd done that in the old days, they would have hung you for it. So it's about reclaiming your right to say, we understand this right exists and we're not tolerating what's going on now. So we're going to get on a little bit further to that. And now I'm going to talk about 2 things. First of all, the committee meeting that I had today, another MP stood up and started talking about, I think it was actually Nigel Farage, that started to talk about you can make a committee hearing into a court. It has the power to do it. Now, there's lots of powers of Parliament because Parliament is a court in its own right. And it has powers. It has powers to imprison people directly. If you are in contempt of Parliament, if you're in contempt of statute, for example. So one of the things that people don't understand about being in contempt of statute, that's still in the common law. It's still in the common law books that I've got here, right? And it states categorically that contempt of statute and contempt of sovereign are common law offences, indictable only. In other words, it's not a misdemeanor and it's not a summary offence. It is indictable. It must go before a jury. It can either be before a jury in a court of law outside of Parliament, or it can go to Parliament itself, right? In that case, you could impeach someone and bring them into Parliament and question them. And at the end of it, Parliament could send them to prison if it believed that they had gone against the English Bill of Rights. We are unique in England in having these at our disposal. Now, Nigel Farage has mentioned it today, King in Council. Charters are in effect, getting back to the charters, it's a very similar, but charters have more power than just king in council. They are the most powerful things. That's why the Charter of Liberties is powerful, the Magna Carta is powerful, and the Charter of Forests is powerful. All of these charters that protected the people are powerful. Here's the kicker, all right? You just don't know because you haven't been taught that for a very long time, right? But when they created the first Statute of Westminster, they expanded the franchise. So it's not just King in Council creating charters anymore. It's the people, because they was given access to the legislature. They was given access to the lawmaking, and we had a separation of powers, and still do technically, where the king or the monarch can veto a bad law, just like in America. It's the executive. The executive itself, or the cabinet, is basically the king in council, or the king in parliament. That is exactly what it is. But in order for you to take control of any of those massive powers as an individual and a subject of the realm, you must vote. Because if you don't, you forfeit those rights. And that's exactly what people have been seeing. People who don't vote forfeit that right. And if they want to live as outlaws like Robin Hood, that's up to them. But you won't never take the country back by not voting. Right, so there's two avenues to that. The judge today that give a lenient sentence to a Sikh that stabbed a white kid, 18 years old, took his life, and screamed racism, so the police handcuffed him and he bled out, right? Now that family wants justice. I want justice. You want justice. As it stands at the moment, and we'll talk a bit more about this, you cannot get justice if you don't vote. You need to get out and vote. And if the nearest thing that's going to give you that is Restore Britain, because I do not believe reform will go anywhere near any of this. But you can't be anti-establishment unless you speak of England. What concerns me is their lack of knowledge of the Constitution, right? And what I mean by that is every one of them people involved, as I see it, of Restore Britain, if they speak of the Constitution, they always refer to it from the state's angle. The Constitution is there for two reasons. One is it tells you the functions and the proper position of the state. And two, it then tells you the subjects of the realm of England, right? And the protections that have been put in place. And the people that sit above that, in effect, as impartial justices, without fear or favour. In other words, they don't fear the Crown in Parliament, they don't fear Parliament itself, and they don't fear the monarchy. They're there with the greatest integrity, that if a subject of the realm stands up in front of them and says, "My lord," meaning a lord of the justice system, "this is my constitution, this is my constitutional right, and you must honour it. That's your job," right? Then that judge must independently look of what you've shown him in the law books, and then you would say to them, "Tell me where and what has overridden the charters of the past, the Bill of Rights that protected those charters, which was Section 3 of the English Bill of Rights, and it was again erased by stealth. They never told anyone that they was doing it. That's fraud." As Sir Justice Laws would say, you didn't put that on the face of the bill, and it is such a crucial part of our constitution. It is unlawful. So therefore, we're going to reinstate it. That means all the power of the old charters come back instantly. In 1948, they removed or top and tailed Section 2 of the English Bill of Rights, and they wasn't allowed to do that. That's the part that they then created parliamentary sovereignty by stealth, by fraud, right? And it was a fraud on the people. It was just slipped in very cryptically, and that needs to be put back to the way it was. But most crucially, the English Bill of Rights says all in singular, forever 3 times, and in this kingdom or this realm for all time to come. So 4 references to forever. It has a supremacy clause. So the European Convention of Human Rights doesn't come into this. They can't override our constitution because we have a supremacy clause. The people are supreme over any European Union jurisdiction. What I'm concerned about with Restore Britain is they are not speaking for the majority nation of England. I think that is deliberate. They are still representing Parliament and the City of London and Westminster, particularly Westminster. If anything, the Union flag, go back to the beginning of this, and I spoke about it, the Union flag represents a British Parliament. Now, it started off that it was only a tiny little square, right? And now it's not just flipped, it has erased England, and there is no England anymore, and they're continuing with that with regionalisation and devolution. That's the part that people have really got to understand. They're not representing you. The only way you can get representatives of England into that parliament and turn this around is if the people from the shires and the people from the counties, the people from the districts and the parishes actually vote for a representative that stands for them, their county, their area, their constituents, and their country meaning England. If someone is Welsh or has Welsh direct ancestry, Wales is being overrepresented in that parliament to represent the Welsh and not the English. All right. Even if they live in England, if they're Welsh ancestry, they're gonna represent Wales. If there's a conflict, they're going to represent Wales. That's what they do, right? It's a bit, and again, I'm not having a go at it, I'm just telling you, it's a bit like Orla Millihan, right? Whilst she may have been born in England, both her parents are from Southern Ireland in Dublin. The influence, and this is why it's not about race, the influence on her from the culture of Southern Ireland that rewrote their constitution in 1936. The Fabian Society rewrote that constitution, made them a republic, and completely stopped, in effect. They implemented civil law in Ireland, which is why it's being overrun as it is, and England is being overrun for the same reason, because civic law is being imposed upon you against the common law and against your constitutional rights. And no one voted for that, right? So Orla Millihan, while she is, and I understand she is a lovely lady, right? I'm not going to attack her. But what I'm saying is this isn't about race. So how can you allow someone, Keir Hardie, for example, was one of the first parliamentarians for the Labour Party. The Labour Party was created by the Fabian Society. He couldn't get elected in Scotland. Believe it or not, Scotland was quite conservative. So he came to London. And then he got elected. And then he went to Wales, and then he got elected again. Right? But my point to you is he wasn't English. Why are we allowing it to happen? Why are we allowing people from a different culture and a different nation to be in our parliament, right? Well, we haven't got a parliament. The British have created something that should never have existed in the first place. And what they did by creating the Acts of Union in 1706, 1707 was allowed civil law or Roman law to enter England and the jurisdiction of England and the spread of that cancer through all of our institutions. That is the problem. And you're never going to solve it unless you speak about it. And Restore Britain, I'm not speaking about that. Now, I'm not suggesting that Rupert Lowe is a bad guy. I'm suggesting that people who are advising him are not looking at the Constitution of England from the point of an Englishman and a subject of the realm of England. They have been indoctrinated by the British to believe something that is completely untrue. And if you start looking back through the old flags and the way that we operated, you can see that what I'm saying is true. And what you're seeing now is a direct consequence. So the committee today, I don't know how many people watched it. There are a number of occasions when, as you can imagine, I've not sworn and I'm not going to swear tonight. Hopefully not going to swear tonight. But I was watching it. I wasn't happy bunny at all. I believe that Rupert Lowe has the right attitude to take it forward. I'm concerned about some of the people he's got wrapped around him, in a lot of ways. But most crucially, the only way that you're ever going to get this now resolved is if you're in there and you're pushing forward. But where I live in central Devon, the guy running Restore, I don't know, but he's certainly got a Welsh name. They're not interested in talking about England. He's not interested in talking about England. There is a process of keeping people out, right? Now, just like what was brought up by a number of different people in that committee room today, they started saying, well, we're already getting these stats. There was a Pakistani barrister that stood up, who's an MP, by the way, that used to be that you have to leave the profession for 18 months before you could be a member of parliament. And it was very unlikely you'd get elected because some people didn't actually like them being members of parliament, right? But the Pakistani barrister, MP, stood up and he started talking about law and facts and this is what we do, etc. And we already take these from convictions, and it is well known that these people in the background, these paedophiles, etc., and people abusing children are predominantly white people, right? What's not being explained to people is the system is geared to stop Pakistani Muslims even being arrested. There would be no record of them people because no one will arrest them. The institutions will not put into their reports what they know to be fact because they don't want to be called racist, or they're relying on that block vote to get them elected. The same thing is happening. This is the irony of what I'm trying to get across to you, if that's the right word. The English nationalism, English constitutionalism, and English people are not represented because there is a barrier that's put in place by these people. In North Devon, that barrier exists, right? They're not interested in England. And the person running it is Welsh, right? So listen, I've already said I'm out. But I want people to understand that you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to turn anything around unless you address that censorship at that level. We are in effect being treated in the same way, if you want to call it that, as Pakistani Muslims and rape gangs. No one will talk about us. Because if we don't talk about it, the problem don't exist. Well, you all know there's 32.4 million of us that signed the census in 2011 said we're English, right? It's the same situation, but it's a different thing, but it's the same thing, right? It's blocking your access. So it appears there is no problem. Well, it couldn't be further from the truth. Does everyone understand what I just said? Did I make that simple enough for people to understand? So someone's just said there that restored Britain do carry the arrogance of the British. I, I absolutely agree. But do you understand what I'm trying to say to you? Is it's the same system in development that Restore Britain are trying to remove this barrier so everyone understands that Pakistani Muslim men are raping um, English white working class girls. The system has put in place barriers so it never gets to the attention of the public, but the same system exists for the English, right? That's all I'm trying to say to you. And unless you solve that, England dead. And I can't see anyone who's trying to solve that. The only people who are trying to solve that is us. We're the only people talking about it. So, and boys do. Yeah, I know little boys were raped as well. I get that. But if you go back to the trial situation that we had today, Henry Noax is dead. No one can bring him back. But you can stop other murders. And from a sentencing point of view, if I had been that judge, first of all, if hanging had been available to me, I would have said, I would have hung you for this, right? If hanging isn't available, and it should be because Restore want to bring back hanging, right? But you need to clear out these judges. And the only way you're going to do that is elect members of parliament who will then impeach the judges, then put them on trial and sentence them because they are subverting the English constitution, which is treason, right? All of this is solvable. All of this is solvable. And the constitution is the solution. The hard thing is no one's been taught it. The only people talking about it is us. There's no one else. And if anyone does talk about it, they have been indoctrinated by the British to believe that they're only pushing forward what the state tells you what the constitution is. Well, there is another aspect of the constitution that protects the subjects of the realm, ordinary people like me and you. And we're not getting access to that protection. Now, on that sentencing today, I've said I know people that have been sentenced to 30 years recommended tariff, right, by the judge for shooting and killing another criminal, right? This there was no racial aspect to it. So in reality, the starting point must be in relation to that 30 years as a tariff. But because of the aggravating circumstances of the case and the aggravating factor, without a doubt, here today, right, in that sentencing, was racism towards a young white male who was stabbed 5 times deliberately for no other reason than he was white. That's it. And the other guy screams racism. The police then handcuff the victim and he bleeds to death. Now, anyone who understands anything about being arrested, the police have to have a reason and record the reason why they're handcuffing you. Because putting the handcuffs on someone is assault, right? So what in effect they've done is they've assaulted, the police themselves have assisted in the murder by assaulting the victim whilst he was suffering from fatal wounds. My view is, from looking at the evidence so far, and I haven't seen everything because they won't release the body cam or the other footage, my opinion of seeing the partial evidence is that the police were in effect joint enterprise because he told them he had been stabbed. He had a visual cut on his face. He was bleeding. And internal wounds when you've been stabbed are obviously deadly because you're bleeding out inside, and he drowned on his own blood. Now, just like the case with the 93-year-old in Sussex that had one leg in a wheelchair, and again, Elon Musk doesn't even know this, had one leg in a wheelchair in his own room in a care home, suffering from dementia. 2 police constables gassed him, battened him, and tasered him. And he died 2 weeks later. And the proper offence was torture. That charge was never laid against them. It was common assault, and they got found not guilty. There was no risk to anyone other than the elderly gentleman himself, who was contained within his own room and technically within his own mind because he had dementia. They say he had a knife. All he had was a butter knife. Yeah, but no one. When I read that case, I was in. Everyone should know we was up there. We was filming it. We was looking in the courts. They wouldn't put the police constable's details on the court boards. It was the state protecting the Crown servants of the state, the CPS, protecting the Crown servants of police constables. And the person who died was a subject of the realm of England, 93 years old, paid all that tax all over his life, never had any convictions. On the other end of the scale, you've got an 18-year-old who had his whole life in front of him. And that judge betrayed not only him, but betrayed his family and the realm, and should be purged. He should be impeached. He should be tried. He should be sent to prison. He should lose his house, his pension, and him and any people like him should suffer the consequence of English justice. You're not going to get to that position unless Restore Britain actually talk about restoring England and restoring the English constitution. But I'm wondering if anyone else actually watched that today. Did anyone else watch what was going on? And don't forget, sharing is caring. So I'm not going to go on particularly much longer, but I will say, I do believe they're closer, but anyone supporting the Union flag that represents, in effect, Westminster and not the people, it represents a political union. It does not represent the people. And the only way you're going to take it back and put that tiny little union, if it carried on existing, there are conditions. And the conditions are you go back to being a tiny little administrative state and leave us alone. Right? If you're not going to do that, then then I cannot support Restore Britain in terms of moving forward. My personal opinion, my personal opinion is England needs independence. We are a colony of the British. We are a colony of Westminster, and they're just using us as cash cows. And it's not just our money we're losing; it's all of our rights. It's foreigners generally that have privilege. In other words, we can remove that privilege. But the true English men and women cannot lose their air rights, their English law. And again, I'll be talking more about that at our seminar and the English Constitution Party and the English Constitution Society. But there's a lot of ignorant people out there, and all we can do is change as much as we can and do as much as we can. Scotland talking of independence again. Yeah, but it depends. So when Scotland's talking of independence, and just to say hello to a few Ace Jaces out there, Christian Resurrection 714, Tracy Truism, Jack Boo sent an email. Let me have a look at that. Let me have a look. We need an English Constitutional Assembly that the UK cannot overrule. They can't overrule it anyway. DD. Hello, good evening to everyone. Andy 937 AD, how you doing? And also, I received something in a post today, which was an earpiece and a really good bit of transmission kit for us to use in Lincoln at Mablethorpe. So before I go any further, I do want to quickly give this a shout out because it's a big thing. Right? Don't forget what it is that we're looking at. So I'm going to put that in there. Take that camera down a sec. So don't forget we've got the English Constitution Society and the English Constitution Party. English Constitutional Convention Weekender. Spend 2 days by the English Sea in defence of liberty. The English Constitution Society believes the English Constitution offers an answer to today's problems. Join us to explore your inalienable and constitutional rights, what they are, why they matter, and how government overreach threatens to erode them. 2 days, one coast, one constitution, one call to defend the rights of free English and men and women. It starts at 4:30 Friday evening, June the 5th, to June the 7th, 2026. And then I'm coming back on the Monday. So special guest Mark Devlin, June's Complex, Central Promenade, Mablethorpe, LM12. 1RG. Everyone is welcome. And again, don't forget what we believe in, self-determination, and the Constitution is the solution. So getting on to the next part, the English Constitution Society will be Sunday the 7th of June 2026. Don't forget that's this weekend coming. Please make your way to the main bar where seaside benches are, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m, seminar focusing on who ended slavery. I'm going to be talking about that and taking questions on it. 2 p.m, 4 p.m, Scar Band, and then 4 p.m. onwards, chit chat and a mingle. So we're just going to be chilling out there. Don't forget, this is our major national event in terms of annual. So next year we'll probably be at Runnymede again. English Constitution Party, Saturday the 6th of June 2026. Please make your way to this is on the Saturday, main bar where seaside benches are, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. a talk about the party and its manifesto. 2 till 3, there's a singer. 3 till 6, questions and answers. And we'll try and answer some questions for you. Hopefully there'll be some members from what we call the Faithful, and that's the group that's always been there for 10, 15 years. And we're now, looking at what we're doing. And the other thing is, don't forget what we stand for. the back of our membership card, Magna Carta 1215, Statute of Westminster, Magna Carta again, Observance of Due Process of Law, the Petition of Right, Habeas Corpus, Declaration of Rights, Bill of Rights, Coronation Oath Act, Crown and Parliament Recognition Act, and the Act of Settlement. So what I do is try and go through these, and if anyone's not seen one of these seminars, you get a good briefing of what it is and what they mean. And why it is they can't just take it away. They can't. English law forbids that, and you've got to understand it. Again, what I'm going to do is show you the most obvious thing here, which is, I believe, that one. Restore Devon and restore England. Well, you can't do that unless you get English people standing up. Devon, like many other places, it doesn't mind if you're English, and particularly if you're English and white, and you move there. What they don't particularly like are foreigners, right? But it's not about the colour of your skin. I can't, in good conscience, support people that are ancestrally not English. It's a bit like English votes for English laws. Well, if all Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland, or even Southern Ireland have got to do is get people elected into in English constituencies, they've still got control, right? And they will do that, and they have done that. I've just explained what happened with Keir Hardie. If you go back and understand what happened today at the committee, did anyone see? I'm going to ask a question now. Did anyone see that foreign lady stand up with? Where she came from, I don't. Someone's going to know who she is. She stood up and started talking. She was a member of Parliament, I believe. She was quite obviously foreign, and yet she's in our Parliament. Let me have a quick look and see what else is said there. One more try. 14 skin. Here, see you all in Mablethorpe. Need a good dance for all our English ancestors. Merry Old England's out there. Restore Northumberland to its original pre-1974 borders. I agree with you. But no one's. Listen, we're the majority. No one's talking about England. I can't see how they're going to change anything. You can't talk about taking down the British establishment when you're supporting the British establishment. It don't work like that. It's that question. Are any of these seminars going to be cast online to a wider audience, or is it quite happily paid to attend remotely? Or the recordings? The reason why I don't do them live is because people don't turn up. People know that these are live, and each seminar is slightly different because there's 1100 years of law. So I'll be going through specialist subjects or answering specialist subjects. Saxon cocktail, everyone, evening, everyone. Who else is out there? Will Nuts out there. Rebecca. Too many furrows in the British Communist Parliament. Yeah, there is. Mr. and Mrs. English is out there. Again, Sue Ellen's out there. Milkin and Jenkins is out there. Keck Rangel is out there. Tracy Truism is out there again. Timbuktu is out there. Romsley is out there. Tony 777 is out there. Neil 56 is out there. Keck Rangel is out there. Give me an English flag and I'll give you a shout out. Bobby Moore is out there. Rebecca is out there. I urgently need to attend in person then. Let me have a look. Tracy Truism, if you wish to send Graham this or whatever, Milking It Jenkins. Adam H.E. is out there. Who else is out there? Merry Old England, Paul Rumblings, Merry Old England, Ace, Taffy Pat, Keck Rangel, EGNR. I've caught that one. God, these are going like mad. Q Gardens, Denzel. That's what I like to see. Look, they're all flashing up with their English. I'm missing people here because it's going too quick. I can't slow it down my end. But you're getting loads and loads of them anyway. Kew Gardens again. Ski Dog Blue. Anarchy Run. Grumble. Andy. There you go. Let's have a look. Freeland. Dave Covey. Julian. Elon. That's it. So remember, previous to setting up the party, people wanted to set up the party because of COVID. Restore Britain say they are going to be addressing that. But prior to that, as the English Constitution Society and English men and women, we used to talk, and it's on our website, about Indigenous people being England and the protections that were put in place for us, which are not being honoured by the state, meaning the British. So we need to relook at that. Grasshopper, how are you? Steve Lomas is out there. Kenny Egan and Gary's account. Timbuktu, let's have a look out there. Deanne. Who else? And Bob 65. I'm trying to get as many as I can. Gooner Mum's out there. Late in, apologies. Freeland. Keck Rangel. Bob 65. And that's it. So hopefully I've covered a few bits off. But I will go back to my original talk about what this is. Remember what this originally stood for, and what it's done now is expanded. It was representing just a parliament and a political union, but Westminster itself now represents itself and its own political kind. It doesn't represent us anymore, but that is the Ensign, and that is, again, the first Sea Lord went to a base of Royal Marine Commandos, saw that the Union Jack was run up the flagpole and said, "What is that?" And the Royal Marine Commando said, "That's the Union flag, sir." And he said, "Well, get it down. That's not supposed to be up there. You're in the Royal Navy, and you're not in the army. You're not anything to do with that. You are a Navy core group, and therefore you need to put up the English ensign, not the British ensign. You can see why it is the English is dominant, right? And that's the way it should be." And then what they did was they expanded that to such a degree that it became that. And there's much more to the story. If you go through the story of the enzymes, and again, when I read something recently about civic law again, and it actually said that Admiralty law, in effect, I've always said that Admiralty law is an extension of the common law, and technically, what they're saying, no, it's not. It's civic law. It's not an extension of the common law, and it can't be. So just to make sure, but it's arguable, but that they regard Admiralty law as civic law, not as the common law. So when people start complaining about Admiralty law, Admiralty law, Admiralty law, Admiralty law, that's where it's coming from. You wish to send Graham a donation? Yeah, my funds are low. I'm daft as a brush. Who says that? Dave Paul, Sue Ellen. Who else is out there? Thank you for that. I am going to say good night, God bless, because I need another drink. And I'll be off. So remember, we've covered quite a bit in this show, but remember one thing. I am only about England. I am not interested in the British administrative regions of England, or devolution as they've now renamed it. I'm not interested in the European Union. I'm not interested in the way Scotland runs its nation under civil law, Roman law jurisdiction. I want England back, right? So that's it. Au revoir, good night, God bless. And don't forget what I believe in. The Constitution is the solution.